Chapter 1 of A Chronicle of Carleton. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. A Chronicle of Carleton by William Wood. Chapter 1. Guy Carleton, 1724 to 1759. Guy Carleton, 1st Baron Dorchester, was born at Straybourne, County Tyrone, on the 3rd of September, 1724, the anniversary of Cromwell's 2 great victories and death. He came of a very old family of English country gentlemen, which had migrated to Ireland in the 17th century, and intermarried with the other Anglo-Irish families equally devoted to the service of the British Crown. Guy's father was Christopher Carleton, of Newry, in County Down. His mother was Catherine Ball, of County Donegal. His father died comparatively young, and when he was himself 15, his mother married the rector of Newry, the Reverend Thomas Skelton, whose influence over the 6 stepchildren of the household worked wholly for their good. At 18, Guy received his first commission as ensign in the 25th Foot, then known as Lord Rothes' regiment, and now as the King's Own Scottish Borderers. At 23, he fought gallantly at the siege of Bergen op Zoom. 4 years later, 1751, he was a lieutenant in the Grenadier Guards. He was one of those quiet men whose sterling value is appreciated only by the few till some crisis makes it stand forth before the world at large. Pitt, Wolfe, and George II all recognized his solid virtues. At 30 he was still some way down the list of lieutenants in the Grenadiers, while Wolfe, 2 years his junior in age, had been 4 years in command of his battalion with the rank of lieutenant colonel. Yet he had long been "my friend Carleton" to Wolfe. He was soon to become one of Pitt's young men, and he was enough of a coming man to incur the King's displeasure. He had criticized the Hanoverians, and the King never forgave him. The third George gloried in the name of Englishman, but the first 2 were Hanoverian all through, and for an English guardsman to disparage the Hanoverian army was considered next door to lèse-majesté. Lady Dorchester burnt all her husband's private papers after his death in 1808, so we have lost some of the most intimate records concerning him. But grave Carleton appears so frequently in the letters of his friend Wolfe that we can see his character as a young man in almost any aspect short of self-revelation. The first reference has nothing to do with affairs of state. In 1747, Wolfe, aged 20, writing to Miss Lacy, an English girl in Brussels, and signing himself "Most sincerely your friend and admirer," says, "I was doing the greatest injustice to the dear girls to admit the least doubt of their constancy. Perhaps with respect to ourselves there may be cause of complaint. Carleton, I am afraid, is a recent example of it." From this we may infer that Carleton was less grave as a young man than Wolfe found himself later on. 6 years afterward, Wolfe strongly recommended him for a position which he had himself been asked to fill, that of military tutor to the young Duke of Richmond, who was getting a company in Wolfe's own regiment. Writing home from Paris in 1753, Wolfe tells his mother that the Duke wants some skilful men to travel with him through the Low Countries and into Lorraine. I have proposed of my friend Carleton, whom Lord Albemarle approves of. Lord Albemarle was the British ambassador to France. So Carleton got the post and travelled under the happiest auspices, while learning the frontier on which the Belgian, French, and British allies were to fight the Germans in the Great World War of 1914. It was during this military tour of fortified places that Carleton acquired the engineering skill which a few years later proved of such service to the British cause in Canada. In 1754, George Washington, at that time a young Virginian officer of only 22, fired the first shot in what presently became the world-wide 7 Years' War. The immediate result was disastrous to the British arms, and Washington had to give up the command of the Ohio by surrendering Fort Necessity to the French on, of all dates, the 4th of July. In 1755 came Braddock's defeat. In 1756 Montcalm arrived in Canada and won his first victory at Oswego. In 1757 Wolfe distinguished himself by formulating the plan
Sample complete. Ready to continue?